we had discussed about trickling filters. Okay, so if you are able to remember, basically we were discussing about attached growth process. And in trickling filters, basically it's aerobic system, but over a period of time, okay, it may tend to become anaerobic. So with this basic information about what we had done last session, let's go on to today's session. Today we shall move to suspended growth process, and primarily we are going to focus upon activated sludge process. So I'll introduce you to the concept, okay, then take you forward with respect to the construction details. Okay, what is the working principle, what are the basic terminologies, okay, what are the modifications, okay, what are the merits and demerits of this system, and finally I shall be summarizing the session for you and listing the references for your kind perusal. So let's try to understand something about, your suspended growth process. So as everyone knows, after your preliminary treatment and then your primary treatment, the subsequent treatment is your secondary treatment. So just like attached growth process, suspended growth process is also a secondary treatment. Okay, again the objective is to remove what could not be removed by the preliminary operation and the primary operation. Okay, so we are talking about removal of the residual organics, those dissolved organics, the suspended solids, the colloidal matter. Okay, again this is a biological process. This is primarily and mostly an aerobic system itself. Okay, now what we need to understand here is, here we take the the support of filamentous bacteria. Okay, and basically what these bacteria do is, in simple words, they break down the organic matter, okay, with the help of oxygen and nutrients, and they break it down into carbon dioxide, ammonia, okay, water, energy, end products, and of course the new microbial cells produced. Now basically when I say suspended growth process, we can have different technologies related to this. For instance, activated sludge process, facultative lagoons, oxidation pond, aerated ponds. Now let us move on and try to understand, when I say secondary treatment and when I say activated sludge process, am I only talking about a particular component? No. Again, in the secondary treatment, again in your activated sludge process, there is importance which is given to the secondary clarifier. Okay, so what we need to understand is, though we speak about activated sludge process, please remember we are primarily focusing on an aeration system, on an aeration tank, and in this aeration tank there is no sludge zone. Okay, so again the sludge is being collected in the secondary clarifier itself. Okay, now of course even your sludge digestion system is a form of suspended growth process. Now what is that we need to understand? Your activated sludge process was first developed in England. Okay, it was first developed in England by two gentlemen, Arden and Lockett. It was developed in 1940. And why do you call it as activated sludge process? It is because the process involves production of an activated mass of microorganisms. Okay, this activated mass of microorganisms which are capable of stabilizing a waste in an aerobic manner. Okay, now yes, you would require the support of microorganisms here, and when I say microorganisms, just like your principle of coagulation where you expect flocks to form, okay, here we take the support of the filamentous bacteria. And if you ask me what would be those, it could be the mycobacteria, the nocardia, okay, it could be pseudomonas, it could be Zugluia. But apart from the bacteria who are responsible for breaking down your organic matter into carbon dioxide, ammonia, water, okay, apart from that, there is also the presence of other elements, other biological forms, such as your protozoans, such as your rotifers. And what is the role of protozoans and rotifers? Their job is to remove the bacteria from the system. And if they do not do that, then there is an imbalance which is created in this process. Okay, with this basic introduction to the concept of what we're gonna deal today. Let's try to proceed further. Now, let me try to explain to you in a very simple manner the construction aspects. Okay. Now, please have a look at this figure here. Now, when I say construction aspects, what all is there in as a part of your activated sludge process? Now, since it's a type of suspended growth process, you will have a reactor in which the microorganisms, in which the biological forms are kept in suspension, which means you need to have a dispersed growth reactor. Most of the times this dispersed growth reactor is basically an aeration tank. It's an aeration system. Okay. Now, yes, there are three different types which I'll discuss later with you. That is, mechanical aeration, diffused aeration, and combined aeration. I'll discuss further. Now, apart from your aeration system, what else is there? You have a secondary clarifier. You have a secondary clarifier also as a part of your activated sludge process. Then you have a recirculation system. You have a recirculation system wherein a part of the settled sludge is recirculated back into your aeration tank. All right. And not only that, since sludge is being produced in your secondary clarifier, you also have a sludge management system. So I will repeat, what are the parts of your activated sludge process? Okay. If I'm looking at a simple flow chart, okay, let's go back to this. Let's go back to your first slide. If I'm looking at your construction aspects, I'm talking about the construction aspects related to the aeration tank, which is a dispersed growth media reactor. I'm looking at a secondary clarifier. Okay, I'm looking at a system, maybe a pump and a pipeline, which is meant to recirculate a part of the sludge. And I also have sludge being removed and sludge being managed. Okay, so these are the basic aspects of your construction details with respect to your activated sludge process. Now, what you see, this image, this plate or photograph, what you're looking at here is basically a aeration tank. Okay, now since you do not see any features on the surface, obviously this is not a mechanical aerator or a combined aerator. Probably this is a diffused aerator, wherein the aeration is happening due to diffusers which are kept at the bottom of the tank. Let me show you a simple video before I go into details.
Secondary treatment. Secondary treatment is the heart of the wastewater treatment process. Whereas the previous steps of treatment consisted in removing the suspended solids by settlement, this step of treatment consists in removing the major part of dissolved pollution.
So you can see here you have the wastewater which is entering from here. That is, the effluent coming from your primary sedimentation tank. Then it enters into this aeration tank, wherein by some mechanism, probably it could be a mechanical aerator or it could be tube diffusers, aeration is taking place.
Mainly BOD5 and ammonia. During the aeration phase, specific bacteria eat the dissolved organic matter and transform it into suspended solids. Other specific bacteria oxidize the ammonia into nitrates, then nitrates. During the non-aeration phase, called also anoxic phase, other type of bacteria convert the nitrates into nitrogen gas, which is released into the atmosphere. To ensure a good balance between food and bacteria, the bacteria settled in the clarifiers are continuously returned.
So now what you're seeing is a part of the sludge which had settled in the secondary clarifier is being recirculated. Now, why is this being done? I'll explain to you in the subsequent slides, but just look at the animation.
At the inlet of the tank, they are called return activated sludge. The upstream part of the activated sludge tank is covered so that odorous air is trapped and extracted towards odor treatment units.
So now if you see here, This is your, this is where the wastewater from the primary clarifier comes. Okay, this is where probably aeration is taking place. Okay, and this is where the treated wastewater is going to the secondary clarifier, and from secondary clarifier there is a part of the sludge being returned. So this is typically how a activated sludge process system would look like. So when I say activated sludge process, I'm not talking about only one reactor. Okay, we have primary sedimentation tank from where the wastewater is entering. We have an aeration tank. Okay, then we have a secondary clarifier. We have a recirculation mechanism. We also have a sludge management system. Okay, now with this basic information, let us continue with the presentation. Now, see, basically, when you talk about aeration, if you recollect, even in water supply scheme, we had aeration. Now, you know very well that aeration is a process wherein you tend to bring air in contact with water or water in contact with air. But in the case of wastewater engineering, it's only air in contact with the wastewater and not wastewater in contact with air. Okay, at least based on the technologies available now. Now, when I say, air in contact with wastewater, what are the different mechanisms? As you saw in the previous slides, okay, there were three ways: diffused aeration, mechanical aeration, and combined aeration. But why is that we are providing aeration? Why is that we are providing oxygen? See, this is an aerobic process. Okay, this is an aerobic process, and you are trying to help the microorganisms to feed on the waste matter. So when you have to help them to feed on the waste matter, they need energy. Okay, so what is the energy? The energy comes from oxygen. Okay, so oxygen is required for the respiration. Invariably, this oxygen may also help in breaking down the organic matter by direct chemical oxidation also. So now, when it comes to your diffused aeration, okay, there are two ways in which you can provide the oxygen supply. One is your tube diffuser, and second is your plate diffuser. What you're seeing on the screen is tube diffuser. So you can see here, this is how though the tubes would be kept on the bottom of the aeration tank, this system. So multiple systems like this will be kept on the bottom of the aeration tank based on a design attribute. And of course, each of these tubes would look something like this, wherein the compressed air is being pushed into a pipe, and from the pipe it comes to the tubes, and from the tubes, when the air is coming out, it comes as bubbles. So you can see here how it happens. Okay, so in simple words, a tube diffuser is probably a system of perforated tubes. Okay, perforated tubes like this. A system of perforated tubes like this, which is kept suspended or kept, at the bottom of your, or not just the bottom, probably near the bottom of your aeration tank. Okay, compressed air is sent into this tube. So when this air comes out of the tube, it comes out as air bubbles with great force. All right, so now what does it do? It keeps your wastewater fresh, okay, because constant dissolved oxygen is being supplied. Okay, it is providing oxygen for chemical oxidation process, and also for the oxygen for your microorganisms. See, the idea of aeration here is because microorganisms tend to consume a lot of oxygen, and if you do not supply oxygen, your aerobic system may become anaerobic, and you cannot permit that. Okay, so make sure that your entire system remains aerobic. Artificial aeration is induced. Okay, now let us go to plate diffusers. Now, plate diffusers, as you can see here, okay, now instead of tubes, we can have some plate kind of mechanism which is kept immersed, suspended near the bottom of your aeration tank. It can be, as you see on the left hand image or on the right hand image. Again, the principle remains same. Okay, now basically what is going to happen? Again, you have compressed air being let into it, and when the compressed air is coming out of these plates through the holes which are being provided, it comes out as air bubbles. Now, typically your plate diffusers, they are rectangular or square or circular plates, which is made up of crystalline alumina or high silica sand. Okay, again, the compressed air is being sent into it, and the air comes out as bubbles with great force. Okay, so that is plate diffusers and tube diffusers for your kind information. Now let us move on to the next type, that is surface aerators. Now when it comes to surface aerators, okay, here what basically happens is you've got two types, and that depends on the axis of rotation of your shaft. Now you can have the vertical surface aerator, what you see on your left hand side, okay, where the rotation is about the vertical axis, and you've got the horizontal surface aerators. Okay, so now basically what happens is here there is, when these plates or when these blades or when these paddles are moving, okay, they tend to create the mixing of air and water, and thereby they help in aeration to take place. So now that you've understood what is diffused aeration and mechanical aeration, that is surface aeration, what is combined aeration? Combined aeration is a process, wherein you tend to have both the systems in place. Okay, you also have diffusers and you also have surface or mechanical aerators. As simple as that. Now let me give you a snapshot or a glimpse of an existing on-site activated sludge process plant. Okay, this is from California. Now this is your aeration tank, what you're looking at on your image right now. Okay, now you do not see any surface aerators. Therefore, what kind of aeration is this? This is a diffuse aeration system. Okay, now this is your plant, wherein oxygen is being or air is being sent into those diffusers. Okay, now this is your primary sedimentation tank from where the wastewater enters into aeration tank, and this is your secondary clarifier. Okay, that is where the wastewater after treatment in aeration tank enters into. Okay, this is typically how your activated sludge process would look like. So again, I'm stressing that it is not just one reactor. Okay, it's a series of different units which work in synchrony. Okay, now with this brief understanding, let's try to understand how your ASP actually works. Now more or less I'm sure you have an idea of how it works, but let me try to explain to you in a simple way. Now basically what happens is, when it comes to your working of your activated sludge process, the sewage after treatment in the primary sedimentation tank, that is after primary treatment, okay, it is entering into your aeration tank. Okay, in your aeration tank there are microorganisms which are already present. Okay, please understand that there are certain assumptions which are made when it comes to your ASP. Assumptions such as, that is, there are no microorganisms present in your primary sedimentation tank. That is the first assumption. Okay, microorganisms are present only in your aeration tank. All right, the second assumption is the breakdown of your organic matter, okay, by this process is happening only in the aeration tank, not in your primary clarifier or your secondary clarifier. All right, and how do we go primarily with respect to the design aspects? For that, we need to consider the volume of the aeration tank itself. So primarily we are looking at aeration tank as the main reactor wherein the ASP process is happening. Okay, now, so how does it work? So as I was telling, the wastewater after treatment in primary sedimentation tank, it is entering into your aeration tank. In aeration tank, by some mechanism, probably surface aeration or diffused aeration or combined aeration, all the microorganisms are kept in suspension. They are kept suspended in the wastewater. Okay, now since there is a mixing taking place, okay, now what happens is these microorganisms, they start breaking down all the waste impurities inside the system. Please remember, the suspended solids are not being allowed to settle down in this tank because of the aeration mechanism. The waste impurities, the colloidal solids, dissolved solids, okay, the organic fraction, they are always suspended in the wastewater. They are suspended in this tank. Okay, so this facilitates the breakdown of these by the microorganisms, that is your bacteria, that is your filamentous bacteria, and eventually they help in the formation of flocs. Now what happens is, probably this process would take about 4 to 10 hours, roughly 4 to 10 hours. So in this 4 to 10 hours, what is happening? The bacteria are getting opportunity to break down the matter. In this 4 to 10 hours, what is happening? Aeration is constantly happening, air is constantly being mixed, oxygen is constantly entering into the system. So now after this 4 to 10 hours of your retention, okay, then the treated wastewater, okay, it enters into your secondary clarifier. So from here, where your wastewater was kept in suspension, where your microorganisms were kept in suspension, okay, after the treatment, the wastewater enters into secondary clarifier. Now secondary clarifier, what happens here? Here there is a detention period which is offered, okay, and based on this detention period, they get opportunity where there is sludge formation taking place. Okay, now the best part here is, when the sludge is settling, okay, most of the sludge goes to the sludge treatment, but a small part of this settled sludge, okay, the biological sludge, it is returned, it is recirculated back into this point, it is recirculated back into this point. Okay, since we are returning the sludge back into this point, it is called as activated sludge. See, what happens is, this sludge contains microorganisms, this sludge contains those microorganisms which are very active, okay, and they are vigorous when it comes to breaking down the organic matter, than when compared to the microorganisms who are coming from the primary sedimentation tank, because these microorganisms are already acclimatized to conditions. Okay, they have already fed on the organic matter, they have reproduced, okay, they are more stronger and predominant when it comes to breakdown. Okay, now let's look at a small video to understand the same working that I've explained to you.
Wastewater entering the aeration basin still contains organic matter such as food waste and fecal.
You need to understand from this image that these impurities are suspended. They're not settlable solids. They are suspended solids or dissolved solids.
Microorganisms in the raw water influent will colonize in the aeration tank and metabolize organic waste to ATP for further cell growth, as well as CO2 and water. As the microorganisms need oxygen to survive, the tank is aerated, for example, with diffuser systems. The amount of oxygen needed for biochemical processes is also known as the BOD value. BOD is a very important indicator for the level of wastewater pollution. To keep a good balance between the number of microorganisms, organic waste, and oxygen, some microorganisms are settled down in the secondary clarifier. Adding flocculants will cause that microorganisms will clump together with particles and settle down as activated sludge. Some of the activated sludge is then recycled back to the aeration basin, whereas the rest is removed as waste sludge, thickened, and then, for example, used as fertilizers. By recycling the activated sludge back into the aeration basin, the amount of microorganisms can be increased significantly, e.g., 30 times compared to the raw water influent. This is exactly the principle of activated sludge, to accelerate biological degradation significantly in a confined space.
I'll again play this video for you. This time I will mute it and I'll give the explanation. So basically you have your aeration system, okay, which is going to contain microorganisms, which will contain suspended solids, okay, not the settlable solids. So what is basically happening? Microorganisms are breaking down this organic matter and they produce energy, they produce new microbial cells, they release carbon dioxide and water. To help them to accelerate the process, we supply artificially the oxygen, air, okay? And this system is keeping the entire system in suspension. So what is happening? After the detention period or hydraulic detention period, the treated wastewater enters into your secondary clarifier, which contains these microorganisms and the sludge aspect of it. Okay, basically they are filamentous bacteria, so they form flocks also. A part of this is being recirculated back into the aeration tank. Okay, the one which is going outside to the sludge management system is called waste sludge. I'll repeat, the sludge which is being returned to the sludge drying beds or any other system is called the waste sludge, and the sludge which is returned to aeration tank is called activated sludge. This is recirculation of sludge. So now what is happening? Again, wastewater is entering from the sedimentation tank. There are microorganisms also entering, but these microorganisms would take some time to break down the organic matter. But the one which we had recirculated, they will be stronger, so they will accelerate the process faster. So this cycle continues. Okay, so there is constant return of viable microorganisms. So basically, by this recirculation, you are enhancing the rate of removal of waste matter. Okay, now let's continue. I hope that you understood in a very simple manner the working of your activated sludge process. Now let me try to tell you some of the important terminologies when it comes to your activated sludge process. Now let's look at the image first. Okay, so that this is your aeration tank. All right, so you have wastewater coming from primary sedimentation tank. Now this is your aeration system, so probably this is a diffused aerator. Okay, now you see these paddles, so this is a combined aeration, your mechanical aeration also, your diffused aeration also happening. Okay, this brown color circles, these are your organic matter. Okay, now you got your white color circles, okay, which is your oxygen. All right, now this is your secondary sedimentation tank, also secondary clarifier. Okay, now RAS stands for return activated sludge. Okay, that is the sludge which has settled down here when it is returned back to this system. Now WAS stands for waste activated sludge. That is a sludge which is being removed and sent to the sludge treatment. So now what are these different terminologies that you need to be familiar with? Now activated sludge, as I told you before, we can actually define this as that sludge, okay, which had settled down after the sewage had been agitated freely in the presence of abundant of oxygen. Now activated sludge is very important for us because it helps us in enhancing the rate of oxidizing the organic solids, and since it's a biological sludge, okay, it is also going to promote coagulation, flocculation, and thereby it is going to convert your colloidal solids, dissolved solids into settleable solids. Okay, now what is this MLSS, mixed liquor suspended solids? Now this entire system you see here, that is when the settled sewage, that is activated sludge, when it is returned back here, and when this activated sludge or the returned sewage is mixed with your wastewater here, when it is mixed along with your microorganisms here, means this entire system, okay, this entire mixture is called as mixed liquor. It's called as mixed liquor suspended solids. Okay, so please do not forget this terminology of MLSS. Now what is sludge volume index, SVI? Now sludge volume index is basically the ratio of the volume of activated sludge, okay, for every 1 gram of dry weight of sludge. Basically, why is sludge volume index important for us? Because it gives us a very good, it serves as an index. Okay, it actually serves as an index of sludge settleability. That is, let us say your sludge volume index is very high, it means that the efficiency is very poor. Okay, now you also see sludge retention time or sludge age or sludge residence time. What is this? Basically, you can define this as a mass of organisms which is present in this reactor. Okay, the mass of microorganisms which is present in this reactor divided by the mass of organisms which is being removed from this system per day. Okay, so what is the importance of the sludge age? Okay, This helps you to control the growth rate of the microorganisms. Okay, invariably it speaks about the degree of waste stabilization. So what is the significance of all these terminologies? See, when it comes to your design aspects, in the next class when we talk about design of ASP, okay, these are the parameters that we are going to address. Now let's look at this food to microorganism ratio, that is F/M ratio. In simple words, it's a ratio of the mass of the BOD which has been removed, okay, divided by the biomass in the reactor. See, when I say food, I am referring to BOD, biochemical oxygen demand. When I say microorganism, I'm talking about the living biomass. So F/M is a very simple ratio of the mass of the BOD removed, okay, divided by, okay, the biomass which is in this reactor. Okay, so when I say reactor, I'm talking about this aeration tank system. Please note, see, in case if your F/M ratio is less, it automatically means that your BOD which has been removed is lesser. Okay, now let's move on further and try to understand certain other terminologies. So what did we learn so far? I told you what is MLSS. Okay, I told you what is sludge age. Okay, I also told you what is activated sludge. Okay, I also told you what is return activated sludge. Okay, what is waste activated sludge. We also understood what is F/M ratio. So what is that we are left with? We are left with hydraulic residence time. Also it is called as hydraulic retention time. This is basically the the measure of the average length of time that a soluble compound remains in the constructed bioreactor. Okay, that is, again, I'm talking about aeration tank. Now let's come towards the end of the presentation. Now there are certain modifications which are possible when it comes to your activated sludge process. Okay, there are three possible modifications. One of them is wherein, okay, you have a complete mix taking place, but there is no sludge being recycled. Okay, the second modification is the conventional type, that is what we understood now, that is completely mixed with the sludge being recycled. So whatever we had discussed so far is the second type, the conventional type, wherein you completely mix up the entire system in the aeration tank and there is sludge being recycled. Okay, that's the second type. The third one is your plug flow, okay, where again sludge is being recycled. I'll show you a very simple video to make you understand what is plug flow. Okay, in simple words, when I say plug flow system, see, there is no forward or backward intermixing, and of course the concentration is not uniform. Let's have the small video to enhance your understanding.
The first configuration we'll look at is the plug flow activated sludge process. Flow enters one end and leaves at the opposite end, moving uniformly through the basin. BOD concentration and the DO uptake rate will get smaller and smaller as the water moves through the basin. The total suspended solids and the volatile suspended solids will increase farther down the length of the basin as the bacteria grow and reproduce. This type of system is normally at least 10 times longer than it is wide. The organic load and the dissolved oxygen uptake is very high at the reactor inlet, and the aeration system must be able to transfer sufficient oxygen at this point, and then can be tapered off as the water moves through the reactor. This design provides the highest BOD removal rate per unit volume, as well as being less susceptible to sludge bulking caused by filamentous bacteria than other designs, assuming there is sufficient dissolved oxygen at the front end of the reactor.
I hope this has improved your understanding of the plug flow reactor. Okay, let's continue. Okay, now let's try to have a brief understanding of the merits and demerits of this system. So when it comes to the advantages, okay, its installation cost will be very much lesser when compared to your trickling filters. All right. Now, when compared to trickling filters, the effluent quality is also very high or better. In fact, when you speak about activated sludge process, if you're talking about the removal attributes, okay, if you're talking about how much of BOD is actually removed with respect to the percentage as original, it can go from 75 to 95%. Even your modern grade trickling filter is only from 65 to 95%. Okay, now if you're looking at your trickling filters, the bacteria removal is only 80 to 95%, but your activated sludge process can help in removal of bacteria by 90 to 98%. Okay, in terms of the percentage of the original. Now see, unlike your trickling filters, there is very less head loss. If you remember, in your trickling filters, you had a rotor system, distributory mechanism. You had to pump the wastewater to a significant height and then make it fall down by gravity. Okay, now your trickling filters, we had issues of bad odor and psychoda, but here in the systems, it is aerobic in nature. Okay, since it is aerobic in nature, since you're supplying more oxygen than required, okay, there is no fly nuisance, there is no bad odor. But yes, this system also has certain disadvantages. For instance, you would require a greater land area. If you remember your trickling filters or biotowers, okay, they took up the space in a vertical manner, not in a horizontal fashion. But what happens with your activated sludge process? You're talking about an aeration tank. So there is greater land requirement. Now here, since you're talking about return sludge, activated sludge, there is a greater quantity of sludge which is generated, which has to be disposed. See, your trickling filter had a very simple mechanism. You did not require any skilled operator, but in activated sludge process, it is not like that. There should be a constant supervision, okay, and you need to have a skilled operator. See, it is not simple biology. Okay, you need to have sufficient knowledge when it comes to the design aspects of a activated sludge process. And the biggest thing is its sensitivity. Okay, it is highly sensitive. Now, in case if the characteristics of your wastewater changes, the entire system can be disrupted. And not only that, in case if your industrial wastewater enters, then the entire system will go kaput. Okay, so basically this process is extremely sensitive, and we need to be very careful when we handle it. Okay, now yes, there are certain issues when it comes to the flexibility, because if you have a shock load, or let us say you have reduced wastewater quantity coming, then the system may not perform to its full abilities. Okay, now one of the major disadvantages is the operation cost, the maintenance cost. Okay, now you're talking about pumping, you're talking about air, you're talking about mechanical aerators. So this is a system which constantly works, so there is operational cost being higher. Not just that, there are certain problems with respect to the sludge settling. Now, if I had been more precise, I can say one of the problem is let's say sludge rising. Okay, then I'll come to the bulking part. Now, sludge rising, or blanket rising, as I would put it across, this is when there is excess oxygen, okay, which has been supplied, that is more than what is required, that much of air has been supplied. Okay, as a result of this, the F by M ratio becomes very less, and your nitrification becomes very high. So you have more and more nitrogen being produced, and what that does is it tends to raise all that suspended solids, all everything tends to rise up in the top of the aeration tank as a blanket. So this is called sludge rising. Okay, the other problem when it comes to ASP is bulking, that is sludge bulking. Now this happens when there is more than the required quantity of your microorganisms, that is your filamentous bacteria. Okay, if there is an overabundance of your filamentous bacteria in your mixed liquor, okay, in that case what happens is the entire sludge or your solids tend to become bulkier, okay, and loosely packed. Okay, and please note, these bulky flocks, they actually don't settle well, and they actually get carried forward into your secondary clarifier. So the prime objective is not served. So my dear friends, these are the merits and demerits of the system. So what did we learn today? We understood in simple manner what is the working principle of activated sludge process. Okay, we also got to hear about certain terminologies such as activated sludge, waste sludge, return sludge, MLSS, F by M ratio. Also, we understood the three probable modification, that is the plug flow, okay, the completely mixed, yes, of course, with the options such as with recycling, without recycling, with aeration, without aeration. We also understood the various advantages and disadvantages of activated sludge process, and we actually understood the advantages and disadvantages by comparing this with the trickling filter. Okay, to summarize and have a very good recap, let's see a very small video. So you have your aeration tank, air is being supplied, your entire biomass, all your waste organic matter, everything remains in suspended state. What does oxygen do? What does air do? Okay, it helps in chemical oxidation. Okay, it helps to serve oxygen for the microorganisms. It keeps the entire system in suspension. So, my dear friends, that was the recap for a very simple understanding of how ASP works. These are the references. I would request you also to go through them. Okay, in my next class, we shall understand the design aspects of how to go about designing an activated sludge process. Okay, so I thank one and all for your kind patience and attention. And now the session is open. If you've got any questions, any queries, please raise it.